welcome to the MF Guide, your fund, your returns. I'm Nivita Ganguly. Joining us today in the studio, we have Nikhil Kothari, Director and CFP at Etica Wealth Management. Nikhil, thanks very much for joining us on the show. Also joining me in the studio is Vandita Shivli to help us really understand all that's going on in the markets at the moment. But Nikhil, let me start by just asking you, a general question on the markets. Because of the kind of turmoil we're seeing, there is a lot of fear amongst investors, particularly retail investors. When they look at their portfolio, it's in the red. What is the sort of general advice that you're giving, investors at the moment?
Okay, so what I'll say is that whenever there's a bad news in the market, market will go down. That's a good time for investor to invest their money at that point of time. And when you're investing in equity, you should have a minimum horizon of 7 to 10 years. So when you're looking at 7 to 10 years, this type of short-term fluctuation is a good buying opportunity for you. Market will always be what in the short term. So in the short term, you may see market going up and down. But if you have a horizon of 7 to 10 years, you will see that everything evens out. And what you need to look at is that is the economy growing or not? Is India is in a growth path? But if you look at that, yeah, India is a growing path, company will keep on delivering result year after year. And if I have a longer horizon, I shouldn't be worried about short-term fluctuation in the market. So I advise all my investors that if you have money in the debt right now or liquid right now, and you don't want this money for 7 to 10 years, it's a good time to switch some money in equity funds right now. I won't say go all out in equity because market will be volatile in the next 3 to 6 months because we have elections coming in the corner, we have crude turmoil going on, we have rupee depreciation. So you may see some fluctuation in the market. So what I'll advise that do STP route. STP is basically staggering your investment over next 6 to 12 months so that you average out your cost and then hold it for 7 to 10 years. You will see very good return on your portfolio.
All right. So that's the strategy. Don't be afraid. You have a longer term view. In the long run, of course, you will get the returns for your investments. Well, let's start off then with our first query. This is Lalit who sent us an email from Bhopal. He is investing through the SIP route about 5,000 rupees each in ABSL Equity Advantage, Mirae Asset India Equity and 4,000 rupees in SBI Small Cap, 2,000 each in ABSL Mid Cap Invesco Fund, Invesco Mid Cap and ABSL MNC Fund, Reliance Tax Saver Fund as well as 1,000 rupees in ICICI Pru Value Discovery Fund as well. Nikhil, he can invest for about 15 years and his investment goal here is to retire or really create a retirement corpus of about 2 crore rupees. What's your view? What's your advice?
Okay, so first of all, he can easily create a retirement portfolio of 2 crores by doing the SIP, continuing SIP. But what I will recommend is that there are too many funds in the portfolio. You have small cap, you have mid cap, you have MNC, you have large cap. So and then you have multiple duplications of those funds. So whenever you're creating a portfolio, you shouldn't have more than 4 to 5 funds in a portfolio because unnecessarily then you're doing over diversification, right? Now looking at his funds, if you look at his Birla MNC fund, it's a sector specific fund, it's a thematic fund. I'll normally recommend that for an investor, right? If he's investing for long term, it's better to invest in diversified fund because it gives him flavor across the market and doesn't have to time the market to when to get in, when to get out. Then coming to his mid cap funds, he has Birla Mid Cap Fund, Invesco Mid Cap Fund. Both these funds has underperformed their category and the benchmark. So I'll rather recommend that stop the SIP on those 2 funds and either you can look at other mid cap funds which are doing good in the portfolio. And apart from that, the other fund, Birla Advantage Fund, the ICICI Value Discovery Fund, he can Mirae Asset India Equity Fund, he can continue to hold on those investments. But I'm saying don't add too many funds in the portfolio. If you want to increase your SIP, increase in the same funds instead of keep on adding new fund. With regard to tax saving, he's already doing in Birla Tax Advantage Fund. So just continue that. Do not add again another funds in the portfolio. So he has got Birla, he's got Reliance Tax Saver. Consolidate that in one fund and rather invest in Birla for a long term, right? And I'll say consolidate his portfolio. You keep on increasing SIP. As your income grows, you should keep on increasing SIP. But that should go in the same fund. You don't have to add more funds in your portfolio.
Well, that's a good diversification on funds. With that, we move on to our next caller, Mr. Rajiv. He's from Vellore. Hi and very good afternoon, Mr. Rajiv. What's your query?
Yeah, good afternoon, madam. Actually, I want to invest by SIP. My monthly planning is 12,000 per month and for 15-year long time. So I have selected some funds, that is Axis Blue Chip, Canada Repco Emerging Equities Fund, Motilal Oswal Cap 35, HDFC Small Cap, Aditya Birla Sun Life. So can you suggest me how it is and it will work for me?
Yes, sure.
So it's a 15-year time frame. So I'll say, Rajiv, you can continue to invest in equity fund. That's a good time frame to invest in equity. But again, as we discussed in the starting, that equity markets will be volatile in the short term. So don't get panic in the next 1 year if you do not see return on your SIP portfolio. You need to keep on continuing SIP. And the benefit of SIP is that when the markets are volatile, you average out your cost. Right? So I'll say continue SIP. With regard to fund, again, you have selected 6-7 funds in the portfolio. I'll say stick to only 4 funds. So you can have one multi-cap fund in your portfolio. So you can have either UTI equity fund or Mary Asset India equity fund. If you want to take slightly aggressive risk, you can add mid-cap fund in your portfolio. So you can look at Edelweiss mid-cap fund or Kotak emerging equity fund. And apart from that, if you want to have large and mid-cap, you can have SBI large and mid-cap fund. But stick to this 4-5 funds in the portfolio. Again, like SEBI has very clearly done a classification of funds. So you have different categories. You have multi-cap, you have large and mid-cap, you have mid-cap, you have small cap. So select only one fund in each category and just continue to remain invested. Then you can see very good return on your portfolio.
All right, so select one fund in each category. That's the clear advice here. And of course, don't be afraid of equities in spite of the kind of volatility we've seen with the kind of time horizon you have. These are the funds that do make sense. Well, our next query is an email sent to us by Sonali Mandal. She's a homemaker and she is an aggressive investor. She's got 2 queries for us. The first is that she's looking to invest a quantum of 10,000 rupees via the SIP route for about 10 to 15 years. She also, wants to invest about 2 lakh rupees in debt funds for more than 3 years. Wants our recommendation on both, and she will be investing for her husband. Wants to know what will be the kind of tax liability she'll be looking at as well. Your advice, Nikhil?
Okay. With regard to equity funds, I'll say that you want to do at 10,000 SIP. You can look at 2 funds in a portfolio and whether to go with a multi-cap type of category. So multi-cap or large and mid-cap will give you good diversification, and because in multi-cap the fund manager has the liberty to move to large and mid-cap whenever he wants to have it. And in large and mid-cap fund, he have 35% large cap and 35% mid-cap. So you get good diversification across market capitalization. So in equity, in multi-cap fund, you can look at UTI equity fund, you can look at Mary Asset India equity fund as a multi-cap category. You can select one of the fund. And large and mid-cap category, you can look at Kotak Equity Opportunities Fund or SBI large and mid-cap fund. Again, you select one fund in the portfolio. So this will give you a good diversification and continue SIP on that. With regard to debt funds, now again you have to remember that debt funds are equivalent to FDs in terms of broadly when it comes to return expectation. Okay, and when you hold debt fund for more than 3 years, you get indexation benefit. So in FD, you straightforward pay 30% tax every year on year, whereas if you do a debt fund and if you hold for more than 3 years, you get indexation benefit. So you only have to pay taxes when your return is more than inflation, and whatever it is more on that, you only pay 20% tax. So it's far more tax efficient to invest in debt fund as compared to FDs. In debt fund, she can look at UTI short term fund, or she can look at Franklin India short term fund. I'll rather recommend to be in the short duration fund, because short duration fund will not carry too much of volatility, and in the 3-year time frame, we should give a good 7.5 to 8.5% return. Now, with regard to tax liability, you can invest in anyone a survivor name. Now, but the tax liability also always depends on who is the first holder. So if your husband is the first holder, he has to pay taxes on whatever the return has been generated. If you are the first holder, then you have to pay taxes as per your tax bracket. So that's where the whole thing. So you can do anyone a survivor name, but the first holder will be liable for all the taxes.
So with the aim of creating wealth in SIP, we move to our next caller. We have Mr. Ramadesikan. He's online with us from Chennai. A very good afternoon, sir. What's your query?
Good morning, madam. I'm Ramadesikan from Chennai. I'm a long-term investor. I want to invest in mutual funds mainly to overcome this taxation thing. Okay, income tax thing. Okay, I want to. Which are the 3 best equity-linked tax-saving funds, and which are the 3 best equity funds? I would like to know.
Okay. In terms of long-term horizon, what are your view, Mr. Nikhil?
First of all, Mr. Ramchandra is a retired individual, so I'll rather recommend him that do not go in pure equity fund. He can look at something called as a hybrid fund. So what are hybrid funds? They are a mix of debt and equity. So they invest around 65 to 70% in equities and remaining portion in debt. So this gives him good diversification and also better risk-adjusted return, because some part of your portfolio should also be in debt because you're already in the retirement, and I'm assuming that this money will be used as as a retirement corpus. So after 5 years, he may need this money to fulfill all his obligation in terms of expenses. So I'll recommend him to go in hybrid fund. In hybrid fund, he can look at SDFC hybrid equity fund, or he can look at Mirae Asset hybrid equity fund, or L&T hybrid equity fund. So out of the 3 fund, if he has a large corpus, he can split into 2 fund, or he can, if it's a reasonable corpus, he can put in 1 fund. And from there, whenever he needs his money back, he can do an SWP, which is called systematic withdrawal plan. So he can fix up whatever his monthly expenses are. So if assuming there's monthly expenses 25,000 or 50,000 rupees, he can do an SWP after 1 year from that fund, and the money keeps on coming to his bank account like a salary coming to a bank account. So this is a good retirement tool, but rather recommend to invest in hybrid fund. With regard to tax saving, again, he has asked suggestion for 3 tax saving fund. I'll say you can have 3 suggestions. You can have Franklin India Tax Shield Fund, you can have DSP Tax Saver Fund, or you can look at Aditya Birla Tax Relief Fund. But do not invest in all the 3 funds. Invest in only 1 fund. Okay, and keep on adding. Every year you have to save taxes under Section 80C. So keep on adding in the same fund instead of adding new funds in a portfolio.
Would there be any way of differentiating between the 3 tax saving funds?
Yeah, so if I'd say Franklin India Tax Shield Fund is a slightly large cap bias, DSP Tax Saver Fund is a multi cap, even Birla is a multi cap fund. So you get a diversification from a fund manager perspective. But again, you have already got 2 hybrid funds in a portfolio, then you have 1 tax saving fund in the portfolio. So you already have 3 different fund managers in a portfolio. So it gives you anyway good diversification.
All right, there you go, Mr. Ramadesikan. 3 ideas for you as far as a hybrid fund, as well as consider that SWP route as well. That will give you a sort of a steady income on a monthly basis. Our next query is from Raghavan in Thane. He sent us an email. He's looking to invest about 10,000 rupees each in L&T India Value, Motilal Oswal Multicap 35, Kotak Emerging Equity Scheme, and Kotak Standard Multicap Fund. He can hold for about 10 years. His aim here is to build a corpus of about 2 crore rupees. Should he change the time horizon or the funds? What would you recommend, Nikhil? Yeah,
so if he has to get 2 crores in 15 years, he has to do a total SIP of 40,000 rupees. Right. So he has to understand that whether he can afford to do the SIP. If he can do that, he can be able to achieve this corpus. Now, from return expectation from a basket of portfolio, you should expect around 12% return on your portfolio. That's a good conservative number to expect on an equity portfolio. Now, coming to specifically to his funds, he has got L&T India Value Fund. That's a value-oriented strategy. He has got a Kotak Emerging Equity Fund. That's a mid-cap fund in the portfolio. He's got Kotak Standard Multi-Cap Fund. That's a multi-cap fund in the portfolio. So he has got good diversification from a fund perspective. Now, and he's got Motilal Oswal is a multi-cap fund. Now, so from an overall diversification perspective, he has good fund in the portfolio. But I'll say that instead of doing a Kotak Select Focus Fund, he already have a Motilal Oswal Multi-Cap 35 fund. And again, over and above that, he also have Kotak Emerging Equity Fund. So when you're selecting fund, you should select one from one fund house also. So as we discussed in the starting, 1 fund from 1 category, and then again 1 fund from 1 fund house. So when you have an overall 5 fund, you will have 5 different fund managers. So you have 5 different fund houses. So you get a different strategy altogether, and that's actually what you do diversification. If you add 5 funds from the same fund house, so basically you're not adding diversification in your portfolio. So I'll say that stop your investment in Kotak Standard Multi-Cap, continue in Kotak Emerging, and add whatever you are stopping Standard Multi-Cap, you can add in Motilal Oswal Multi-Cap 35 fund. Now all this fund, you can continue to remain invested. There's no issue with that. But again, as I told you, he has to have a horizon of 10 years and bear with the short-term volatility, which everyone's creating panic in the market right now. We get a lot of SMS every day that market will further fall. Market can fall further, there's no doubt about it. But all this thing is a good buying opportunity for people who wants to invest for long term.
Well, that's an interesting investment tip. 12% return on equity should be good with the current market scenario. We move on to our next caller, Mr. Nitin, who's online from Gurgaon. Very good afternoon, Mr. Nitin. What's your query?
Yeah, good afternoon. I have been a mutual fund investor since 2006. And I have invested from a long-term perspective for a horizon of 10 years onwards. But my observation has been that many funds, if not all, they become dormant after a point in time. When I say dormant, it does not necessarily mean that they are showing losses or a negative movement, but dormant in a sense that it seems that they are on autopilot and in all practicality not being actively managed. So I just want to understand the strategy for a long-term investor. on how to move the funds around in such cases. And second, whether the new SBI directive of reducing the number of funds would help in reducing such cases. The example, for example, I am quoting, I have been long-term investor in IDFC Premier Equity Regular Fund. Its new name is IDFC Multicap. And second is Reliance Regular Saving Fund. I had been long-term investor in that, and that also has become dormant. Thanks.
Okay, so long-term perspective, what's your recommendation on that?
Okay, first of all, Nitin, if you're investing in open-ended fund, right, then the fund do not become dormant, right? Fund manager keeps on actively monitoring the portfolio, and they keep on changing the stock whenever they feel that something is not doing good or something is better. Because when you're investing in open-ended fund, investor can come in, investor can go out at any point of time. So you may have invested 10 years, but someone may have coming now also in 1 year. So there's nothing called as dormant in any fund portfolio. Now, again, when you're investing, you need to look at fund performance. You need to look at the risk ratios of fund. You need to look at the fund manager, and you need to look at your objective and select a fund. Now, coming to if I really take a long-term picture, there are many equity funds which have been existing for last 20-25 years, and they have grown your money 75 times to 100 times. So 75 times to 100 times money cannot be grown if you have been not an active fund manager. So they're actively doing that work, and they've generated very, very good return from the investor perspective. Coming to your specific query regarding to both the funds. Now, IDFC Premier Equity Fund had a huge change in the fund manager. So earlier the fund was run by Kenneth and Radhe, and then there was a change in the fund manager, and then the new fund manager came in. So because there was a lag period of 2.5 years, you may see that the fund has not performed as compared to his peer group. And when the new fund manager changed in, he has a different strategy, and that may not gel with the earlier philosophy. So obviously when there's a change in fund manager, when there's a change in objective, you need to review your fund. Right? So I'm not saying that once you have invested, you again keep on investing for 10 years, even if everything has changed in the fund, right? So you need to obviously review your portfolio. So every 3 years you need to review your portfolio. So review doesn't mean that you have to change the fund. Review always means that whether your fund is in the same line what it was earlier, whether the fund manager is the same, whether it's performing in line with his peer group, right? And with the philosophy why you invested in this fund is still matching the philosophy. If those fundamental attributes have changed, then you need to change the fund. Otherwise, if the fund is still doing good and is comparable to the benchmark and the peer group, you can continue to hold on to the investment. And the good part is that you will only create wealth when you stay invested. It's not when you get in and get out, you'll make money. You'll always make money when you stay invested. So always have a long horizon, stay invested, but review your fund periodically. And if there's a change in fund manager, there's a change in philosophy, you need to change the fund.
All right, so clearly some reassurance there from Nikhil. There's no need to worry as such. Of course, keep reviewing your investments, and we can help you with that right here on the MF Guide. With that, we're completely out of time here. Nikhil, thanks very much for your time helping out all our viewers. With that, we'll wrap it up here on this edition of the Mutual Fund Guide. Stay tuned to BTVI for more news and updates.